maybe if they keep the 16-year-old at 2 for junior or whatever point, then maybe it just not that many kids though. Like honestly, I don't think it changes that much, but maybe it makes major midget U18 hockey a little better. I don't know.
Yeah, well, but this is kind
It
of
could make filter down, make better leagues everywhere.
well, I think that is something that could likely happen because if you have all these kids from the states now, that this kind of goes into my next point is like, how does this trans or how does this change or transition like recruiting strategies for teams, right? So like if I'm the Windsor Spitfires as an example because they're literally right on the border, am I much more likely now to go be scouting Michigan high school or
1,000%.
Michigan and
Top players in
before
your
yeah, and before I wouldn't, right? Before like or not as much. And I mean maybe Wins is a bad example because they do actually take a lot of guys from over there, even through their draft picks and stuff like that. But like I don't know if I'm Ottawa, if I'm whatever, like am I going to spend some time
you
on
better.
across the border now to
You
find
better.
whereas before maybe it was just not worth it because you're like, these guys are looking for a different path mostly. So why don't I just
I think in the CHL, this is every team has U.S. scouts, obviously, and the U.S. program keeps a lot of the not a lot keeps 20 kids from kind of leaving. But other than that, you got to go and do your scouting. I think what happens is you obviously don't take them early unless you've talked to them and said, no, I want to play in the OHL. Like the Hayes brothers have done that, and like there's quite a few. There used to be a lot more Americans actually, but I think now, so and currently also is like you'll see teams take flyers, and to me, if I was a GM and maybe I'm just dumb, to me I would draft really well. If I was like the Guelph Storm, for example, sorry, George, but if I was drafting, I would go and really scour like your good first 7 rounds ish of like the best talent you can kind of muster up. And then after that, because if you look at the number of players that make it after the 10th round or whatever, it just slims down. For me, I would have been throwing lob balls and just I'm going to take this guy he'll get drafted. This guy will get drafted like in the NHL, and then have them get drafted and like Sasha Passagov when he came back was like Anaheim said, "Okay, go back. We don't want you to go to college. We want you to go to Guelph." So I would have thrown a bunch of those bombs out there every year so that maybe you get a couple sent back to you just because they're good players in the NHL.
well that's another element too is like how does this affect the importance of the draft,
Which draft?
the OHL draft, because or CHL, whichever draft in the CHL, because now like there's nothing stopping an 18-year-old or a 17-year-old from going and playing. Like there's no risk now
Going and playing.
in the CHL. So like because most kids would not go because of eligibility reasons, right? And most of the reason I would say that the OHL people are not looking at those leagues because outside of their draft picks is because it's unlikely that you're going to get an 18-year-old to come sign to play with you for 2 years when if they're good enough to do that, they'd probably be looking to go US and their eligibility is gone. So now does that make it more attractive for them to go recruit a 18-year-old to come play for 2 years instead of
That's
they need this 4-year development
no.
model.
I think that's great because like really you're the best players in you want your team to be 18, 19, 20 years old to be really competitive anyways. Good, but throw a curveball at you though. Maybe this is not good for the CHL.
Elaborate.
I know I'm going to. I'm just throwing things out there
Yeah,
because
go.
I'm a firm believer in this piece right here. Because everybody assumes that the American kids are just going to come here, and that's probably true. But like I always say, if when you live in territories or districts like us, before private academies and stuff came on, when you had to play for the side of the street you lived on, right? If you live in Windsor, you play for Windsor, no matter how bad the program was. Or you could go London, Elgin, Middlesex. Like there's all these divisions. So what if your program is just more outstanding? So what if the CHLs is just more outstanding in every way? Then people will want to come here. But what if the Chicago Steel or whoever Muskegon Lumberjacks, not bad,
Nice.
say to you, Eric Palazzolo, as you're coming in, yeah, you could go and play in the CHL, and that's fine. Like, it's good. It's a great league. So is ours. Um, we'll give you a house to live in, this, that, and the other thing. Like, I'm just throwing shit out there. And we have a skills coach or two skills coaches. You have a gym here, and we have a nutrition plan. We have this, and but we really have it. Like, actually, that your life is set up as good as it is at the program or as a college is. Maybe that changes things, right? You know what I mean? So I think over time, it's going to be who's the league will be important, but it's also who could who can have the best programs. Like, and that's what, because that was one of the competitive advantages that the Chicago Steel had for several years, is they had a really good skills coach who is a skills coach with the Montreal Canadiens now. They had a whole system there of coaches and skills, and they met, and it was like outstanding. Probably the best development program that you could ever find, which would attract some of the great players. Since these guys have left, a few of them, it's gone down a little bit. So, but that was a sales pitch. So we'll be the best. We'll develop you. It'll be the best. So,
well, I think
just
that's
a thought, right?
Yeah, and that's probably going to be where most of my interest is in how they recruit now.
Oh, I don't know.
Right?
I
So
don't
like,
know.
do they like
I know.
the biggest thing for me is going to be the draft. So is the draft only important now for 7 rounds, like you're saying, right? The first 7 picks, yeah, and then we'll just throw some shit out there for the last little bit, whatever, and you'll see maybe way more guys jumping up for 2 years or for 1 year. You know, you get a whoever, like let's say because this happens frequently too, where it's like you'll get a guy that maybe got drafted, maybe he played for a year or something and then couldn't quite cut it. A lot of times those guys end up being like the leading scorers of, you know, whatever junior league team. So they'll be leading the junior B league or leading the junior A league around here. It's like maybe another team might be more likely to grab that guy for a year now, because now we're just looking more.
Yeah, just a
right?
pure goal scorer. Let's get a goal scorer.
We just happen to be watching those games more because we might be able to find someone.
It'll be
more
interesting, man.
Right? So like that's kind of where my biggest interest is.
A lot of people saying the USHL will be done. We're going to have a hard time, and I don't know about that.
Well, so do you see anything like structurally, like if we take the CHL for example, do you see anything that they might have to change, or that a different way they might have to think about things? Because now
From the CHL perspective,
because now they're actually competing with those leagues when they weren't before, you know. So
yeah, they were and weren't.
Right. So if I'm going to go play in the USHL, I'm probably want to be an NCAA kid, right? Whereas
Previously,
now, Whereas now, like we just had with Reeder, like he just jumped from Sioux Falls to Flint. So is there anything you see as from like a competition perspective that's going to be important now to make sure you can like even retain players going either way, right? Because
you have to have a good program.
Yeah, right.
You better have a good reputation. Like, they'll give London Knights a lot of credit. They've done this for years. They've been a top team, and they recruit well. They've always recruited really well. They just got a guy, I don't know, that played against Charlie the other night, Montgomery. His brother played in London for a little bit, but his name is Blake, I think. He's 4th round pick to Ottawa. And anyways, he came from USHL and came to London the other day. Kitchener just got a guy from out west, I believe. So if you have a good program, you can do that kind of stuff. So I think if any player, like, there are some players and quite a few players, like Sasha Pastujov, for example. Charlie was telling me that when he came over, he goes, "Yeah, you're not going to Notre Dame now. You're going to go to Guelph." And he goes, "Where the heck is Guelph?" He didn't really know what it was. Why would I go there? Because he was a product of the U.S. He always thought college. So they never even thought of the OHL as an option. So there's probably a lot of kids that they think it's USHL is where I want to be, right? So I don't think it's going to hurt the USHL as much as people think. And then I think when you're coming down to recruiting kids, I think if you can, to get them to come to your side, it's just how good your program is. If you could walk into a building like, let's just say the Sleeman Center in Guelph, and or you see a game, you just sit there and go, okay, it's sold out. That's cool. Always sold out. What an atmosphere. It's loud. It's proud. The sound of the city is like really nice and clean, and this is cool. And if you go down to the dressing room, it's like the top notch, and you got a weight room, and like you walk out of there, you go, this is good. If you do that to London, Kitchener, and Oshawa, like these Windsor, all of them, but it's really good. Whereas if you're a team that has, Now you're in a smaller city and the travel shit, and you're trying to recruit someone, and the barn is like, well, okay, it's kind of shitty, and the dressing room's not super, and the town is like whatever. Now it's like
Yeah, the competition is
maybe
stiffer
I'd
now.
rather
Yeah,
play in Chicago Steel or Youngstown, or you know what I mean. So I think competition, and then if you can look, if someone can look and say, okay, we've developed in the last 10 years this many NHL players. This is your goal, right? That many NHL players or guys making money in Europe and stuff, then that's another competitive advantage or sales pitch that you can throw at people
yeah, for
for a
sure.
recruitment tool.
Yeah, it's interesting, man.
Like you would be kind of leery to go to a place that's got zero NHL players come out of it, and you have a different coach every single year.
Yeah.